Hoy tenemos el gusto de poder hablar con JAAN TALLINN. Él es un programador estonio que estuvo detrás del desarrollo de Skype en el pasado, pero que luego se ha dedicado específicamente al trabajo en torno a la inteligencia artificial, al machine learning, y a qué impactos podría tener eso en nuestra vida, fundando centros y siendo parte de iniciativas que vamos a conocer en esta conversación. So thank you very much, JAAN, for being with us here in Future Congress.
It's good to be here.
I would like to start with your Center for the Study of Existential Risk. What is that, and why are you so worried about our existence?
I guess we all should be. So the second part is very easy. For the last 10 years or so, I've been trying to cultivate an ecosystem in the world that is trying to figure out what are the problems, long-term problems that like most of humanity isn't addressing already. And so therefore, I've been traveling around and doing philanthropic funding, etc. So whenever people approach me when they want to create some research centers or some other organizations, I seriously weigh whether I can help them. And indeed, in that way, I've been participating so far in two initiatives. One is at the Cambridge in the UK, called the Center for the Study of Existential Risk at the Cambridge University. And the other one is Future of Life Institute in the other Cambridge, which is in the US and Massachusetts, called Future of Life Institute. And indeed, the goal of both organizations, although they are quite different in many aspects, but the overarching goal is to think about things that we really need to know in order to ensure that the future is going to be good rather than dystopian.
We usually are very afraid of climate change or maybe, I don't know, UFOs, space stones that can hit our Earth, but we never think in those things that you have said are your worries. First of all, artificial intelligence, second of all, synthetic biology, and the third of all the unknowns coming from technological development. So why do you think that artificial intelligence is one of the most risky things that we are living with right now?
I mean, there are several ways of putting it, but one way I've been using recently is that if you think about it, we are seeing a tail end of a certain period on this planet, which lasted 5,000 or 100,000 years, depending how you count, during which human brains were the main future-shaping force on this planet. And if you look around in the studio or anywhere in the urban environment, everything you see went through, almost everything you see went through some humans or some groups planning. So yeah, humans are the main causal agents when it comes to shaping the future. And that now will change. We are in the process of delegating more and more of our decisions to machines. One way of framing what artificial intelligence is, it is the science and the engineering of how to delegate more and more human decisions to machines. So, and necessarily, as every CEO knows, whenever you delegate things, you also lose some control over what's going to happen. So the overarching concern really is that the mechanisms that we have used to shape our future, to have control over what happens, for example, in order to address climate change, we still need to remain in control for the next 100 years or so. However, if you are going to delegate away all our decisions, including crucial decisions about the shaping of the environment and controlling environmental parameters, it means that we need to really do our homework before we can do that safely. or we should avoid such delegations in the first place.
What kind of things would you let to artificial intelligence, and what kind of things would you keep for humans to be safe?
So the really complex thing is that it's not obvious what are those things, because whenever you delegate something, it's possible that the thing that you just delegated is going to have like a really outsized effect on what you didn't expect. So in some ways, like climate change, like we didn't, like nobody's kind of deliberately trying to warm up the planet. Like it's just a side effect. It's an externality of a human environmental, human economic activity. So for example, we might just thinking we are going to doing simple kind of delegations in the area of algorithmic trading, for example, and just building smarter and smarter machines to make more money on stock markets. But that might have similar kind of side effects like human economic activities, and those effects might kind of unfold in like much shorter time frame. So it's like in some ways we have to kind of be careful about delegations in general whenever we are doing kind of delegations that are like potentially bad side effects.
Where are the biggest risks of artificial intelligence in your work, in your research?
So I think you can kind of divide the risk analysis of AI into two, depending on, and there are kind of like very different communities that are addressing those two different categories of risk. One is risk of deployment of AI that we already have. So things like kind of problems with facial recognition, bias in machine learning, they're like really hot topics. But there are almost entirely problems with AIs that we already have. And the question is, how do we kind of deploy them in a way that is fair and safe? And then like the other category that I'm myself mostly focused on is AI that does not exist yet. Now the problem with kind of trying to lower risks from things that don't exist yet is that you necessarily have to be kind of like abstract in some sense. You need to think about in general terms. You need to think about what the intelligence is, what is planning, what is policy search, and what are the sort of the invariants that you need to keep in mind, regardless of what kind of AIs we will have like next year or next decade. So therefore, like the things that I am really thinking about the community that I'm supporting is thinking about is kind of general properties of what it means to constrain an intelligent planner, for example, or what it means to have an AI, what it means to control an AI that is potentially smarter than you, and what it means to have some kind of ability to correct an agent that is that you think is doing a mistake, and what it means to have some protections against the manipulation from a very smart agent.
You need a lot of science fiction knowledge, no? You need to do that kind of exercise of imagining the future and how can it be, no? But I won't go to the next point, which is synthetic biology. What it is and why is that so risky in your research?
Yeah, so I do think that I rank synthetic biology just kind of second after AI. This is kind of my personal assessment when it comes to kind of sort of big technological near-term risks. And the reason is that if we are not careful in what kind of organisms are we going to create, we might have some kind of really bad runaway effects. It's the kind of one really important property of biology, at least many aspects of biology, is that it can be self-replicating. And whenever, like as we've seen in current crisis, it's just like a tiny organism that is kind of causing the worldwide trouble second year in a row, right? And that, I mean, there's some debate still, but it's like kind of somewhat unlikely that it was like kind of deliberate engineering. Now, if you imagine what can be done with a deliberate engineering, once you have ability to actually plan synthetic organisms in either from the perspective of doing deliberate harm or just having a big effect without thinking about the side effects. So one important property that nature has, that it is not trying to kind of have like deliberate plans to have like an outsized effect. Like everything that happens in nature, in some sense, happens by accident. Therefore, like the nature is not trying to engineer a deliberate, killer organism, whereas humans absolutely can. So it's like that's like one really big reason why I think when humans start exploring synthetic biology, they can do enormous good, but at the same time, very novel and very real risks that go with it.
In the sense that you are talking right now, what's the worst part of humans, the more risky part of humans designing, for example, artificial intelligence? I'm just thinking like, if we are the creators of new things, and we also have these, I don't know, bad things inside, how can we affect the creations and I don't know, build monsters?
Yeah, my co-founder at the Cambridge Center, Sir Martin Rees, he says that we should be concerned about error or terror scenarios, and terror scenarios indeed is something that you're referring to, which is humans kind of deliberately either like one way of thinking about technological progress is that the effective radius of technology, every new technology or technological artifact gets bigger. Like you can affect like way bigger part of the planet with nuclear weapons than you can with like stone axes. So whenever you're getting more and more powerful technologies, you are in some sense empowering smaller and smaller groups of people. At one point, you just might have like one crazy person able to affect the entire planet. So that's like one side. However, myself, I'm more worried about kind of the error part. People not necessarily having bad intentions, but they don't necessarily think about the side effects, and even worse, they are often motivated to kind of deliberately ignore the potential risks of their activity that they're doing, in hopes of that everything will go well and they will get their scientific publication or whatnot. So in some ways, I do think that the most kind of dangerous aspect of humans when it comes to AI is that we are, I call it kind of minimum viable superintelligence creators. And the problem indeed is that we might be able to create something, but we are not smart enough to create something that is safe.
And do you think that artificial intelligence can make us commit less errors? Like, can artificial intelligence save us from our own problems?
Yeah. So I mean, there are like multiple ways to answer that. One is that it's indeed like whenever you need to solve problems, you need intelligence. In some sense, you need capabilities to search for design, search for plans, search for policies. And like as we get more and more powerful AIs, we definitely like we or AI will able to kind of search better, more effective plans. Now the question is like how to ensure that those more effective plans and designs will be in service of what we consider a good future. And the second answer is that, or second aspect of the answer is that indeed there might be interesting ways to sort of apply the increasing power of AI towards actually making the AI safe itself. So it's like you can kind of think about the effort that needs to be solved before we can kind of safely delegate everything to AI if you wanted to. And you can divide it into something that humans need to do as our homework. We just can't delegate to AI because it's not safe to delegate to AI. And then like other part, which is hopefully larger, that like once we have solved this homework bit, the crucial bit, we can actually delegate to AI and in some ways kind of leverage our ability to create safe AI.
There's a very nice part of being humans, which is altruism. You are part of the effective altruism movement. Why are you part of it? Why do you think it is altruism necessary for humanity, especially in this moment of our history?
Yeah, so I think there's like a longer answer to that. It's
Take your time, don't worry.
Compress it. But like one way of looking at it is that it's important, like once you're gonna have solved your own sort of simple goals in life of being able to living a comfortable life and helping your friends, etc. Like you're really gonna start thinking about like what is the kind of meaning of your existence, and like what are the things that you can actually do. What is the kind of most important thing that you're not doing right now? And one kind of school of thought that I find like really important indeed is effective altruism. So because like there is like one typical sort of failure mode, what might happen once you have like kind of made enough money to give away, is that you're just following your heart in the sense that you do things, you give money to places where you will feel good giving it. And now the problem with that is, and that has been shown in many cases, is that you will, like in a world that is like those feelings that you are following, they have evolved like thousands of years ago, and they might no longer be adequate in today's global connected world. Like when you did things that felt good, when it was just a tribe of 50 people, that they actually were good for those 50 people. But like now in the world of like 8 billion people, like if you do things that feel good, you might actually be doing harm. So like that's where the effective comes in effective altruism, and because the school of thought of effective altruism says that it's not enough to just do good. You should also think about what are the actual consequences of your doing the thing that you think is good. And it is surprising that people have found that there is like a orders of magnitude difference between different philanthropic actions. So yeah, to summarize, I'm really interested in having a good positive feedback, because I do think like most humans actually are wired to do that once they have kind of satisfied their own economic and kind of welfare constraints. And the second part is that I know I'm aware, and increasing number of people are aware, that if you just follow your feelings, you're not going to end up doing good, at least not a sufficient amount of good.
To end this conversation, JAAN, I would like to know what is your most terrible nightmare about future, because you are also part of, you are co-founder of this Future Life Center of Study also. So what is your worst nightmare about the future that we project right now, or you can imagine that it doesn't exist, but what is it? And what is your greatest dream about future if humanity really goes through the nice path?
So I think it's not very valuable to think about like what are the worst nightmares, because as we know from sort of literature, like the way to get like really bad scenarios is if you imagine like a utopia, and then you just like change one important aspect about it. So like you have like utopia but without privacy, utopia without growth, or without like everything is perfect but like completely boring because it just repeats every 10 seconds. And so I think these are kind of utopia, like, so dystopias that come to mind. And I do think that they are worse than just like everybody being dead, because everybody being dead is sort of like a default. Like it has the value 0, but it doesn't have the value negative. And you can easily get negative values when you just like take human values, which are in some sense fragile, and you just like disrupt one aspect of it. When it comes to kind of imagining utopias, in some ways I don't trust my ability to kind of construct like a perfect utopia. I do think that it's there are like list of I can kind of come up with a list of properties that I do think like a sort of plausible utopia should satisfy. And there are things like people having autonomy, people having still meaningful decisions. It wouldn't be just a video game. Everything wouldn't be a video game. That there would be consequences to their actions. Still, there would be like elimination of things that aren't voluntary, like things like kind of diseases and involuntary death. Like sometimes people say like, are you against death? I said, no, I'm not against death, but I'm against involuntary death. So yeah, these are the opportunities. And like most important, I think there should be a lot of fun for some value of fun. Like I sometimes say that fun is fundamental in the sense that you can construct happiness out of fun, but not necessarily fun out of happiness.
That's great. I really thought that this interview would be much more negative. I'm happy that you that study the risk, you are an optimist finally. So I hope you have fun in the future, and thank you very much for being part of Future Congress.
Thank you very much.
Nosotros tratamos de tener esta conversación. Es interesante como este hombre que ha hecho un recorrido en relación justamente a eso que no vemos, a los riesgos del futuro, de los próximos 100 años, puede alertarnos respecto de ciertos temas sobre los que no hablamos, como la inteligencia artificial, como el desarrollo sintético biológico y esas otras cosas que todavía no imaginamos.